Way down in the furthermost Mexican state of Yucatan, separated from the central portion of our great southern neighbor by hundreds of miles of impenetrable jungle and comfortably accessible only by means of the airplane, is one of the most exciting ancient cities of the Americas. This is Chichen Itza, now the weird and fascinating ruin of a magnificent Maya metropolis of 1,000 years ago. Certainly it is a thrill to come suddenly out of the jungle fastness upon the enormous buildings about which once existed the outstanding civilization of our hemisphere, and quite likely the greatest of the entire age. Even little Jesus and Pedrito, present-day children of the Indian caretakers and themselves descendants of the men whose handiwork these structures were, view with awe the majesty of the observatory, although these lads have lived in its shadow all their lives. In this impressive building, ages ago, Mayan scientists studied the stars and probably perfected their famed Mayan calendar, the most accurate ever to have been devised, for this calendar could differentiate any single day within a period of 370,000 years, and it predated by at least 1,600 years the adoption by the Catholic world of the Gregorian calendar which we use today. Modern Mayas, however, such as these Chichen Itza caretakers seen here clearing away the growth that appears so quickly in the jungle, recall little of their ancestors' glory, as in their greed and superstition the 16th century Spanish conquerors destroyed the great literary and scientific records of the Mayas, as well as the educated upper class of this amazing Indian race, so that literally there remained no one to replace the loss. But neither violence nor time has been able totally to destroy Yucatan's marvelous ancient architecture. And in recent years, modern scientists and archaeologists of many nationalities have cooperated to save and restore Chichen Itza for the students of our own and future generations. The massive structure that we see here in the distance was dubbed the nunnery by the conquistadores, and history tells us that here once lived maidens devoted to the service of the ancient Maya gods, much as were the Vestal Virgins of Rome. They were strictly supervised by an abbess, who permitted them no worldly contacts, though they might leave the temples to marry when they had received special permission from the priests. One of the chief deities of the Mayas was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, whose main temple is seen here. This supposedly white god was worshipped throughout Central America under one name or another. Probably the most beautiful and amazing restoration of Chichen Itza is the Warrior's Temple. Here, scientists of the Carnegie Institution worked arduously in conjunction with the Mexican government for several seasons to excavate and replace the lovely lines of this edifice. The standard bearer is as dramatically silhouetted against the spectacular tropic sky today as he was ages ago when throngs of devout Mayas climbed the steps with their offerings to the gods. From the altar of the Warrior's Temple, we see Chaahk mole, on whose lap such offerings were placed by the worshippers. There are a number of Chaahk moles scattered throughout the temples of this strange city, 180 still unexcavated mounds, all concealing massive public buildings, remind us that once upon a time, Chichen Itza counted its population at 200,000 souls, and that the city was more than 12 miles in length. Tourists and students never tire of exploring the wealth of detail that is found here, and that tell us so vividly of the complicated and highly developed civilization of the old Mayas. And here is the symbol of the venerated plumed serpent. These are the stylized snouts of the rain god Chaahk, found everywhere in great profusion throughout ancient Maya cities. Since rain was the first necessity, no god came in for more devoted attention than Chaahk. In the ball court, the Indian ancients played their sensational game of Pok-A-Tok to as excited throngs as ever greeted Babe Ruth in the Yankee Stadium. The objective of the opposing teams was to send a solid rubber ball through their respective rings without suffering it to be touched by hands, feet, calves, or arms of the players. The name Pok-A-Tok derived from the sound of the ball as it bounced on the stone walls. Between sites of the excavated cities of Yucatan stretch many miles of nearly level jungle occupied by the descendants of the original builders who lead simple lives, fearing little but drought and locust, both of which menace their corn, staff of life throughout Mexico. Sometimes the jungle buzzes like this, with a threatening locust pest, the sky darkened, the population made miserable by the unwelcome presence. This discouraged Indian is anxiously setting forth to inspect the condition of his milpa or cornfield. If the locusts have reached it in their thoroughgoing travels, the diet of this man's family will be considerably curtailed until another crop can be realized. Here is an example of the relentless destruction that this little Indian fears. Fortunately, the rich jungle earth and climate of Yucatan permits 2, even 3 corn crops yearly. As we leave Chichen Itza and start across country to the rival Mayan city of Uxmal, we are awed by the dramatic visitation. Historians believe that the forerunner to the doom of the glorious age of the Mayas in Yucatan, which abruptly ended with the advent of the conquering Spaniards, was the war between Chichen Itza and this elegant city of Uxmal. Being quite a recent excavation project, the buildings here are in many different stages of reconstruction, and it is fascinating to observe in this one court exactly what the ravages of time have been in this fertile land of quick and luxuriant growth. All the year round, men are employed to keep the jungle from rapidly nullifying the work of the archaeologist, which can only be pursued in the dry season. With machetes and sticks, they battle undergrowth and not infrequently reptiles that encroach with the jungle. It is exhausting work in the hot climate and must seem almost futile in a land where growing can be described as virtually audible. It is interesting to note that the native hardwood used for the door lintels in these old edifices has in many instances outlasted the stonework. And now the pilot of our Mexico-bound airplane accommodatingly circles off his course to give us our final view of Uxmal from the air, an unforgettable sight. We could not leave the land of the Mayas without indulging ourselves in an introduction to the modern life of these people of exceptional history. So we asked to be put down in a typical Gulf of Mexico fishing village, Ciudad del Carmen. Carmen is in Campeche, another of the remote jungle states that has enjoyed daily airplane service for 12 years. And it is by means of the airplane that practically all interstate traveling is done, as there is neither railroad nor highway connecting the Mexican mainland with the Yucatan Peninsula. Carmen's is the tiniest of the mainline jungle airports, albeit one of the busiest. Stretched lazily along a delightful strip of Gulf shore, this pleasant, sun-drenched village was once a noisy, fearsome buccaneers' headquarters. Visitors still occupy themselves digging for buried loot of the old pirates upon occasion, though by far the more profitable occupation would seem to be fishing and relaxing amid paradisical scenes of beauty and solid comfort. Rest is a high art in Carmen, and even the teamsters, not a whit worried by waterfront problems, take time off to cultivate Morpheus between jobs of loading the little Gulf cargo boats. Besides the airplanes, these boats form the only travel connection between the peninsula and the outside world. They often take 2 weeks to make the run from Veracruz to Merida, Yucatan, a matter of 5 or 6 hours by plane. Oysters are plentiful in Carmen's waters, and these lads are gathering them for tomorrow's market. Work and play, both at a leisurely pace, have kept the present-day Mayas, humble and uncultivated as most of them are, an attractive, healthy tribe of primitives with pleasant natures and good physiques. Here the oyster clusters are being broken apart for better handling. Children take their places in the light labor of rural life naturally and contentedly. This wheelbarrow load represents a good afternoon's work. In Carmen, the fishermen live oddly enough in brightly painted wooden houses, a type of structure very infrequently seen in Mexico. Healthy lives make happy children, and we did not have to look far to find wide smiles and courteous response among Carmen's young set. The Yucatecan Maya is today as pure-blooded as he ever was, because he is mixed with no other Indian race throughout the ages of European domination, and therefore has retained all his original racial characteristics: the large head, wide face, almost Mongolian forehead and cheekbones. His skin is remarkably light. Here on the beach and in the warm Gulf waters, Little Yucatecans are growing up much as they have grown up throughout time. To them, war and strife and the machine age must seem remote and incredible complications. As surely as they have forgotten the griefs of their ancestors, they must have rejected as fantastic impossibilities the rumored troubles of the outside world of today.